what a piece of crap this franchise has become. Freddie Kitchens went 6-10. You're 3-11. Your lame ass Freddie Kitchens is laughing at you. This is one of the worst run organizations in sports. The owners gallivanting around to NBA games and airports and stadiums, and look at your product, Jimmy. Oh, my God.
The Cleveland Browns just handed their head coach his pink slip. Yesterday's 31-3 demolition by the Chicago Bears wasn't just another loss. It was a public execution, a professional embarrassment broadcast in frigid December weather that exposed every crack, every flaw, every miserable decision that's plagued this franchise for 2 catastrophic seasons.
They call plays with no regard for the game itself.
Let's start with the basics. The Cleveland Browns are 3-11. This is a franchise that entered the season with playoff aspirations, with a roster that was supposed to compete, with a coaching staff that won Coach of the Year honors just seasons ago. Instead, they've become a laughingstock, a cautionary tale, a team so dysfunctional that even Freddie Kitchens is probably laughing at them from his couch.
Freddie Kitchens went 6-10. You're 3-11. Your lame ass Freddie Kitchens is laughing at you.
Think about that for a second. Freddie Kitchens, the man who was universally considered in over his head, who lasted exactly 1 season before being shown the door, won 3 more games than this current Browns team. Kitchens went 6-10 and everyone agreed he had to go. Stefanski is sitting at 3-11 and somehow there's still debate about his future? The math doesn't math, the logic doesn't logic, and Rizzo is absolutely right to be furious, because yesterday's game against Chicago wasn't just about the final score, it was about how they lost. It was about the complete and utter breakdown of basic football fundamentals that you'd expect from a high school JV squad, not an NFL franchise.
Chris, you ready?
Ready.
Bad coaching checklist.
Okay.
Number 1, were there penalties?
Of course.
Did some of them start drives?
Yes.
Was there clock mismanagement?
Of course.
Before the half, they threw 3 passes and took like 10 seconds off the clock.
Before halftime, the Browns threw 3 passes that took roughly 10 seconds off the clock. 10 seconds! That's not game management, that's game negligence. They call plays in a vacuum with no regard for game situation, no awareness of time or context. And here's the kicker, literally and figuratively. The Browns called a timeout with 19 seconds left in the game, down 31-3 in what was reported as 5-degree weather. Let me repeat that. Down 31-3 with 19 seconds left, they called a timeout.
And did they call a timeout with 19 seconds left, down 31-3?
Riz, never say die.
What the fuck was that, dude? My God. Oh, my God. What was that? Get everybody off the field. It's 5 degrees.
What are we doing here? What's the thought process? Your players are freezing in single-digit temperatures. The game is over. You've been humiliated by a Bears team that's had its own struggles this season, and you're calling timeouts like you're trying to orchestrate some miraculous comeback? It's coaching malpractice. It's ego over common sense. It's everything that's wrong with this organization crystallized in one baffling decision. But wait, there's more, because the Browns didn't just lose, they lost in the most Cleveland Browns way possible. They started the game with the wrong plays in their quarterback's wristband. Yes, you read that correctly. The wrong plays in the wristband.
With the state of this offensive line, and with the state of this coaching staff and this offense, and guys that get balls taken out of their hands in the end zone, Jerry Jeudy, it's impossible to judge, to make any kind of judgment on a quarterback.
This is the crucial point that everyone seems to be missing. You cannot fairly evaluate a quarterback, veteran or otherwise, when he's operating behind what might legitimately be the worst offensive line the Browns have fielded in decades.
Chris, since 99, and this includes 1-31, that may be the worst offensive line the Browns have ever trotted out in a game.
Let that sink in. Since 1999, that includes the 0-16 season. That includes the 1-31 stretch across 2 years. And Rizzo, who's seen every iteration of Browns football over the past quarter century, thinks this might be the worst offensive line he's ever witnessed. The quarterback wasn't just under pressure, he was running for his life from the opening snap. His receivers had balls literally taken out of his hands in the end zone. His coaching staff gave him the wrong plays to start the game. His offensive line was getting destroyed by a Bears defensive front that made them look like traffic cones. What exactly is any quarterback supposed to do in that situation? Pull off miracles every single play? Overcome organizational incompetence through sheer force of will? The offensive line crisis goes beyond just one bad game. This has been a systemic failure of roster construction that falls squarely on Andrew Berry. For years, the Browns have neglected the trenches. They've thrown money at skill positions while leaving their quarterback, whoever he happens to be, to fend for himself behind a turnstile offensive line.
And you know what? In Andrew Berry, the roster, the O-line, the neglect of certain areas, this, and I don't want to hear about the one good draft. I don't want to hear about it. Let these people go. You know what? I'll drive this guy to the Giants right now.
This is what happens when you prioritize flash over foundation. When you think you can win with weapons and skilled players while ignoring the basics of line play. The NFL is won and lost in the trenches, and the Browns have been losing that battle for years. Berry's had 6 drafts. 1 was good. The other 5, ranging from mediocre to outright disasters. That's not acceptable for a general manager who's been given this much time and resources. And let's talk about the defense for a second. The vaunted Browns defense that was supposed to carry this team. The unit led by Myles Garrett, who's on pace to set the franchise sack record. Rizzo's response to the sack record chase? Brutal honesty.
Myles Garrett's going to set the sack record. Woo! You know what that does for me? Nothing. Good for Myles. He's a hell of a player, and he's wasting his time here in Cleveland.
That's the reality Browns fans are living with. Their best player, a generational defensive talent, is wasting his prime years on a team that can't get out of its own way. Garrett won it out at Radio Row earlier this year, and Rizzo admits he initially took offense to that as a Browns fan. But now he gets it. Why wouldn't Garrett won out? Why would any elite player want to stick around for this organizational dumpster fire?
I took offense to Myles Garrett when he went on Radio Row and said he wanted out of Cleveland. Like, as a Browns fan, I took it to heart. I really did. You know what, Chris? I shouldn't have. This situation is so bad right here. It was probably the right move for the dude.
The really scary part? This isn't a one-year anomaly. This is 2 years of sustained failure. In the last 2 seasons, the Cleveland Browns are 6-25. 6 wins, 25 losses. That's not rebuilding. That's not bad luck. That's systematic organizational failure from top to bottom.
At 6-25. In 2 years, the Browns are 6-25. What a piece of crap this franchise has become.
Kevin Stefanski has taken 2 years to achieve what Freddie Kitchens did in one disastrous season. Think about how damning that statement is. It took Stefanski 24 months to rack up fewer wins than the guy who was universally panned and immediately fired.
It has taken Kevin Stefanski 2 years to do what Freddie Kitchens did in 1.
The special teams have been a disaster for multiple seasons, yet Bubba Ventroni still has a job. The offensive line has been neglected for years, yet Andrew Berry gets to keep making roster decisions. The game plans are predictable and executed poorly, yet Stefanski remains employed.
You didn't fire Bubba Ventrone last year, let alone this year. That's a tank job.
At what point does accountability actually matter? Rizzo raised an interesting theory. The Browns are actively tanking. They're not just bad, they're intentionally bad. You keep trotting out the same failed special teams coordinator, you refuse to address glaring roster holes, you stick with game plans that clearly aren't working. It's either tanking or complete incompetence. And honestly, at this point, does the distinction even matter? The ownership situation deserves scrutiny too. Jimmy and Dee Haslam are gallivanting around to NBA games in various stadiums while their football team deteriorates on the field.
The owners gallivanting around to NBA games and airports and stadiums, and look at your product, Jimmy. Oh my God, it's putrid.
This is a franchise that has become a punchline, a team so bad that even the New Orleans Saints, who just snapped their own losing streak, look competent by comparison. So where does this leave the Browns moving forward? If yesterday's embarrassment against Chicago didn't seal everyone's fate, nothing will. After watching that game, Rizzo and his co-host Chris agreed everyone has to go. Stefanski has to go, Barry has to go, Ventroni definitely has to go. This isn't about scapegoating, it's about acknowledging that the current leadership has failed spectacularly and comprehensively. The sad irony is that Myles Garrett will probably set the franchise sack record while playing for a 3-win team. Individual excellence trapped in organizational mediocrity. It's the Cleveland Browns story in a nutshell. The Browns have 3 games left this season, 3 more weeks of this organizational embarrassment. And if Rizzo has his way, if sanity prevails, changes will be announced the moment this season mercifully ends. Because this isn't just about a bad season anymore. This is about an organizational culture that accepts failure, that makes excuses, that can't even get the basic details right, like having correct plays in a wristband. The Cleveland Browns have become everything their fans feared they'd become. They've cycled through coaches, quarterbacks, and general managers, but the dysfunction remains constant. Tony Rizzo has been covering Cleveland sports long enough to see multiple iterations of Browns' failure. He's lived through the heartbreak, the false dawns, the rebuilds that went nowhere. And yesterday, after watching his team get demolished by the Bears in freezing temperatures, he finally said what needed to be said without filter or hesitation.
You know what? I'll drive this guy to the Giants right now. Giants want him as their coach? Bring it on, baby.
Kevin Stefanski's time is up. Andrew Barry's time is up. This experiment has failed. The Cleveland Browns are a professional embarrassment, and everyone responsible needs to go. Now. The fans deserve better. The city deserves better. Myles Garrett deserves better. It's time to clean house and start over. Again.